Racism is a crime. Social injustice is a crime. Standing by and allowing this to happen is an accessory to these crimes. This Tuesday, the ladies and I talk racism, social injustice, and about the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd. I can't breathe until justice is served.
Hey guys, it's your girl Basia, and today's Tuesday, so that could only mean one thing. It's time for Ask Basia video podcasts. Welcome to part 2 of our series, I Can't Breathe. At the end of this series, it is our hope that you would gain a better understanding of the need for us to come together as a human race. More than anything else, it's our hope that you understand this fight is not for superiority, but for equality. Today, nothing has changed. In fact, it may have gotten worse. While Derek Chauvin is on trial for the murder of George Floyd, yet another unarmed Black man is gunned down and killed and taken away from his family in the streets of Minnesota. Yes, Dante Wright is murdered by a white police officer who mistakenly uses a taser gun to kill him, allegedly. This same week, a video surfaces with police officers arresting a Black Army lieutenant by the name of Caron Nazario, who was tased and assaulted for a routine traffic stop in his uniform. You all hear me? Should we also mention, just before that, a video of a Black man, because this happened previously, surfaced, being a Black man arrested and beaten outside of his home in Hollywood after a woman called police in a domestic violence situation. Police shows up and arrest the first man they see, who happens to be a Black man, while they were looking, the real suspect was a white man. So for those of you who still want to deny whether racial profiling is real and still exists in these streets of the United States of America, I have just provided you with the evidence that racial injustice and profiling exists. I'm joined by some phenomenal queens. And if you're into chocolate, like Gary Owen, well, today's your lucky day, because I have not one, but two beautiful sisters. At the bottom, we have Dr. Stephanie Thompson, who is Jamaican.
Yes.
and also, she happens to be a reproductive endocrinologist and infertility specialist at the Institute of Reproductive Medicine and Science at St. Barnabas in Livingston, New Jersey. She's an attending physician in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at St. Barnabas Medical Center and board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And returning to our panel this week is the phenomenal Alana Avis. Alana was born in Montreal, Quebec, to Trinidadian parents. She's a cybersecurity risk executive and fitness enthusiast who loves a good, effortless fashion moment. Currently, she's also venturing into entrepreneurship, building an e-commerce brand rooted in wellness. Before we get into it, ladies, I want to remind our viewers and listeners that the Ask Basia video podcast is available on Spotify and iTunes, and our video podcast is available exclusively on Basia blog, basiapowell.com, and YouTube/Basia Powell. Let's get into it. Ladies, welcome.
Welcome.
Or should I say, welcome back? You know, we are in the middle of a trial and we're witnessing racial profiling by the police. Look at the recent examples I just listed. And while the trial is happening, another young Black man senselessly killed by a seasoned officer who don't know the difference between her taser and her gun. You hear me? What do you say to people who feel that we are all being sensitive about this Black thing? How do we stop this? Dr. Stephanie Thompson,
Whew.
I'm starting with you.
Okay. Wow. It is really hard to find the words to say, how do we stop this? It's hard when you see this and there's still many, many people out there who do think that we're completely overreacting. At some point it's just incomprehensible. I think that education and knowledge really remain very powerful for us to not be afraid to speak up at any point. I mean, I know myself in the past would have just kind of let things go. Starting last year with Black Lives Matter, I almost felt a responsibility and a duty, even if it was something that, maybe I would have brushed off in the past or said, no, I'm being too sensitive. Those times are over, right? There's no more sensitivity. There's no more, let me just, again, kind of brush it off because.
Be politically correct.
Right. I'm not going to be politically correct anymore. I can't. I have a son, I have a husband, and the danger is the fact that, people around us have unconscious bias and are not taking the time, just like this cop didn't take the time to think about her taser versus her gun, to really recognize, how their actions affect people, especially Black people in this country.
Wow. And I echo your sentiments. Alana, I mean, I know we touched on some of this last week, but last week, Dante was alive.
Right.
It's like you said, you have no words. It's kind of a little bit mind baffling that this is the thing that I feel is we have made progress. We're making progress. And when Black Lives Matter first came out, all the movements, I felt really good. I felt like we're doing something, but a year later, it almost feels like what progress did we really make?
It's like deja vu, right?
It's deja vu. So, then I have to sit back and say, what will it take for things to really change? I mean, I know it's years in the making and it's not going to change overnight, but senseless killings, that needs to stop. It absolutely just needs to stop.
I almost wish, just like an article I wrote a year ago, which is with this podcast, there's an article that goes along with every podcast, entitled "A Vaccine for Racism." I was like, you guys, y'all could have just hurry up, and so many companies found this vaccine for COVID-19. Come on, Pfizer, come on, Johnson & Johnson, y'all find some kind of vaccine.
They took a pause.
Yeah, find a vaccine for racism. You find a vaccine because this is a pandemic. This has been a pandemic for a long time. You hear me?
But the thing that disappointed me the most with the Black Lives Matter movement is I felt that we all knew what was happening, right? Like, this was not news to me. So when my friends of other races would ask me, how do you feel about this? I said, this is nothing new. Like, this is new to you, but it's not new to me. And it being new to you is actually a disappointment in the fact that you have not recognized all of these years, this, again, unconscious bias that translates into some overt racism and dangerous situations. And I was very disappointed in the conversations that I was having with allies or, people who I wouldn't use the word racist, but those who just have not, again, taken the time to think about what it may mean to be a Black person in America.
Well, I have several angles for what you just said, and I would ask you later on again about those same allies or non-allies and the kinds of betrayal you experience, because we talked about that last week in part 1. However, I want to say to you all that I am not upset with the people who did not understand before last year altogether. I'm not. Because what you said, Dr. Stephanie Thompson, is that all bets were off. I said that last week. After last year, those of us who were looking cute and walking around under the disguise of being too professional to be affected and too worldly and too everything, and we're like, okay, well, maybe this is not something to discuss in this forum. We are also to be blamed. We are to be blamed for being politically correct. And I put myself in the ring. You know, we are being blamed for don't wanting to be, you know, we don't want to make other people uncomfortable, like by saying such a thing, because we were raised that way as well. So maybe they didn't want to talk about it because it made us uncomfortable. The same way we didn't want to talk about it in some cases, not all, because we have the closet racists, and we're going to talk about that, right? So I believe that we need to cut some of them some slack, since we also just kind of woke up, right, Alana? Right.
Yes.
However, all bets are off. Nobody wearing blinkers. We coming out blazing, like our t-shirts. You know, I want to bring some attention to our fabulous t-shirts honoring Martin Luther King, honoring Rosa Parks, Obama, all our leaders who we took for granted, who John Lewis and all these people who too many to mention, even the ones who took the bullet for us, but we still carry the pain. All these people who made it possible for us to be free, educated, have colleges to go to rise above what they were trying to tie us to. I want to acknowledge these people, and that's what we're doing today. However, to acknowledge them, to acknowledge the fact that they had to fight for us to do this, is to acknowledge that racism has always been around. Social injustice has always been around, because that's what they were fighting against, right? The fact that we can drive down the road in our pretty car and live in the best neighborhoods and choose our zip code is because of them.
But they're not part of the standard American story, right? They're not a part of American history that everyone learns. So at the end of the day, you know, that is a part of the systemic racism by not educating everyone else. And, you know, your point about driving down the street in your fancy cars and your zip codes brings me to the fact that I don't even want to let my son walk down the street by himself, right? Because it's not the people around me who know where I live. It's those people who don't think that
you live there.
And those are people who aren't going to take the time to ask, you know, my child where he lives.
Or believe him. Right, Alana? You're not going to believe him.
Poor child said, my library card has my address on it. Why can't I walk down the street?
I mean, I mean, that's the same thing. Like, even I remember at work, you know, once you get to a certain level in the organization, you get a parking spot. So I'm driving into work. I pull up in my little parking spot, and then, you know, the CEO walks out and I see this and I see that, and they're like, literally, like, mouth drop. Oh, you park here? That's your car? Was that a birthday gift? People, they just don't, like you said. It's not the people that I know. It's the people who don't expect to, you know. And actually, from that day on forward, a lot of those individuals treated me differently, and not in a good way differently, more in a bad way, meaning like, who does she think she is?
And those were the times when we should have spoken up, but we were either afraid, we were trained to avoid confrontation or something. But I want to move on to something else, because this is a core of this week's episode, where we want to talk about a racist can be someone of any race. I want to be clear on that. You have Black people who are racist. We're not going to sit here and behave like you don't have Black people who are racist, right? We have Black people who are racist. However, generally, people who are racist are the last people who want to be called racist. For some reason, they like the action, but they don't like the label, right? It's the funniest thing to me. So I want us to, Stephanie, how do you define a racist?
Oh, well, I mean, a racist is technically somebody who thinks that they're superior to other people, right? And their actions, you know, carry that out. And I think that is an appropriate definition. You know, so I would go with that. But, you know, I think a racist is someone who also does not have any self-awareness about what they're doing and how it impacts other people, you know. And
I like the second one more.
You like the second definition more?
Yeah, because the first one could also be socially prejudiced, you know, and sometimes social prejudice is not necessarily racism. And a lot of us come from cultures where there are hierarchies that we've never questioned, we've been a part of, and we just leave it like that. And it has nothing to do with race. It just has to do with money and privilege and that kind of thing. So I like the second one more.
Right. So I don't know if you all have read the book Caste by Isabel.
Of course.
I mean, it is probably the best description of racism, you know, in this country, and I recommend it to all of my ally friends. Really understand.
And it trickled down to me.
Right. And then, yes, to really understand, what the concept is. But, I think, I may take some of that back, because I do think sometimes people who truly are racist do have an intention of hurting other people. But the intention is, I think with that era of superiority, like we're less than human, right? I mean, that's how slavery, and that's how, if you look at the Holocaust, essentially the issue is that if you don't see people as people or as equals to you of some sort, it's very easy to make those people less than human.
Alana, how would you define a racist?
People who are a person who feels superior to another based on the color of or in appearance, color of skin, physicality, just by default. That is plain and simple. I mean, keeping it plain and simple, there's many variations to that, or levels of racism that we experience, but
Yeah, and pretty much I sum that up by saying, who at their core, they believe that they, by birth, they have an inherent right to be superior. They don't have to do anything. They don't even have to go to school. You can come as educated as you are. You can be as however you live, however you want. They are still at the top of the ladder by virtue of the race that they're born into. And when they take that action further to try and suppress you and bar you from opportunities that they believe are inherently their opportunities alone,
right,
therein lies the problem.
Yes.
Yep.
So I mean, we're not going to sit here and just define the racists, because you see, I find that the racists, they have the problem. They're not the only problem. I am scared of the allies in disguise, the racists in disguise as allies. Those are the ones that hurt me last year. Those are the ones that I've just discovered. How about that? How would you identify an ally, Dr. Stephanie Thompson?
I mean, an ally is somebody who doesn't think I'm overreacting when I say, that I'm concerned for my family and that about my experiences. An ally is someone who really understands, I think, even though they could never experience it, the hurt and the microaggression that you go through on a daily basis, as a person in this country. An ally is someone who doesn't say, after you describe an experience, well, maybe they were having a bad day. You know what I mean? All right, or try and explain away your experiences. Your allies also take action when they see other people, not just you who are their friend or you who are in the same social class, in a situation that they can uplift or they can speak up. That's what allies do.
What about you, Alana?
I agree with that. And I would say too that, with the whole Black Lives Matter, for me, I've really actually been really vocal about this and stood up for myself in amongst several different groups of people to talk about, their microaggressions, etc. So for me, an advocate is somebody who not only when something major happens, i.e. a killing, they jump in and say, I feel for you, let me learn about your culture, what you've gone through, etc. I mean, it is somebody who in a day-to-day way are implementing, advocating, supporting, right? Myself and people,
who look like you.
So like at work, socially, etc. Because in my opinion, it is good and we need to speak out, when we have these movements and trials, etc. But where you also need to make impact is on a day-to-day basis to really move that needle.
Yeah. And
Agreed.
It doesn't have to be perfect, right? And
precisely. So I was going to say that because hold on, we would not have gotten here.
Right.
Martin would not have gotten through. John Lewis would not have gotten through. Rosa Parks would not have gotten through. And the list goes on. Al Sharpton, living legend, would not have gotten through if they didn't have allies. Martin Luther King had allies in the white community. It is my view that an ally is in the White House. So you don't have people an ally is not somebody who's perfect. But an ally is someone who's willing to get uncomfortable, to have the discussion and further the good of the suppressed group or race. That's an ally. An ally is, as you said, as you both said, is not someone who wants to convince you that you don't know what you're talking about, who is disgusted by you pointing out like a next black man just got killed. Don't get on like it didn't happen. You're not my ally.
Yeah, but this is not in defense, but what I've noticed, and I think you guys might agree, is some people react like that because they're just so uncomfortable. They don't know what to say.
Well, just get uncomfortable.
I agree, but I won't say empathy, but I recognize, I most of the time recognize when somebody's uncomfortable, and you kind of have to say it's okay, as opposed to they're not really your ally. You know what I mean?
So I'm speaking directly to my so-called allies right now. If you're uncomfortable, I would appreciate you telling me you're uncomfortable, you don't know what to say, but just don't say the wrong thing. Because right now I'm walking around with a notepad and I'm crossing out names. You feel me?
There's been a lot of crossing out names. Everybody gets on Facebook and says they're crossing out names.
I'm crossing out names.
I'm always uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Get uncomfortable. You know, be willing, because I will, like, I'm not Asian, but I'm willing to hit the streets to protect Asians.
Right.
I don't want to go down there, but I have known Asians who will not hit the streets to protect Black people, right? And I'm not trying, I'm saying, hey, this is your aha moment. And I'm not celebrating what you're going through. I'm not doing that at all. I will never do that. But recognize that this is for you to now see, hey, you know what's powerful about the Black movement? We have civil rights legislation. We have our people, these people, they march, walk, were beaten for us to have a certain level of protection. We don't have protection when the cameras are not working. We know that. But at the same time, if we were we should not be a group that feels better that the next group is now being exploited. We're not going to sit across here as Black people and say, oh, it's the Asian time now. We're not, no. Al Sharpton and they ain't doing that. We protecting everybody. And that's why the fight is for equality, not for Black supremacy.
You know, I don't feel like in this country we have protection. I really don't. I don't think any minority has protection.
You're right. You're right.
Legislation or not. I mean, with everything that's happening these days, and the fact that the only reason it's become more out there is because of social media, film, and body cams. It's been happening, and I don't feel safe.
I agree. However, as Black educated queens, we could agree and not be aggressive, because you know they see us like that too. So I respect what you're saying. The only difference, and I understand why you're saying it too, Dr. Steph. But here's the thing. You know why I say that? When I see corporations and institutions who are inherently racist in their behavior, disguise their hiring patterns, now scrambling to have head of diversity and scrambling to put us at the table, and they're scrambling. You can't tell me they're afraid of our movement. We have a movement. We have protection, right? When we have a president who had to answer to the base because he would not have gotten there if it were not for the base, you can't tell me we don't have the power politically and legislatively. We do. We have more than you recognize. Yeah. But has it stopped? Has it stopped the murder and the profiling and so on? No. We have a long way to go with that. But they now have a body of people to answer to that was so uncommon generations ago. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that progress. You hear me?
Yeah, that is true. You know, when though Black women are not suffering from, you know, maternal mortality because of the innate stress that they have to deal with every day, then I'll start to feel better.
Yeah, and I hear you where you're coming from in your field. That's very real. I don't see that every day, you know. But I think for Alana and I, who've both been a part of the corporate world and corporate America and so on, you're seeing movements. You're seeing that they realize that they have to answer to us. ABC News don't have a president who's Black, female. Why are you scrambling to do this if it wasn't a problem? What's up with that? Why are you not? You're looking crazy in these streets. But you know what? You're not going to apologize to us, but Apology accepted. You're looking crazy. Why do you need to go fill it up with some, while you're at it, fill it up with some Asians and some and all the Asians. Just fill it up, because guess what? We see you. Dr. Stephanie, I want to go back to another point, right? We talked last week about, and you touched on it, but I asked you to pull breaks, but let's go back to it. You talked about allies and so-called friends and so on who were not empathetic. What was your experience with that? Because we already talked about ours, like, people who hurt us. And what was your experience? Talk to us about that last year when this all happened for Black Lives Matter.
No, I think it was just mainly, lots of calling of overreaction. Right? People who would not understand when I made comments like, I get concerned when I get pulled over by the police, that we need to have training as to how to interact with police. Like the fact that that's even a conversation, that those are things that we have to think about on a daily basis. And, they're kind of denying my feelings on that. That is what I found to be hurtful.
So it was in your head. That's what it was saying.
Right. Essentially. So that to me was the worst part. And then, the part I found funny almost were those people who I'm kind of like their one Black friend. And, and, that they really felt like they were being, they just would sympathize with me, and we can't, we can't understand how this is happening. And it's kind of like they were just denying history, that this had been happening for generations, and now we just see it. It's like they forgot everything that ever happened. And to your point, can we blame people? Because it's not really.
Blame ourselves. We were always sitting down in their house realizing it was just us alone. But somehow we liked it.
It's not really in the history books, every little thing that we've gone through.
But let's, Dr. Stephanie Thompson, you always bring it. And that's why I want to have you back over and over and over. Let us go back to talk about the one Black friend thing. Every one of us understands the one Black friend thing. Come on.
Right. Especially once you get to a certain socioeconomic or professional level, right?
Where are all the one Black friends out there? Where you at?
Let me tell you something about the one Black friend thing. And I just always make it a point to let people know that I'm not a first generation physician, right? So a lot of people feel like I'm a product of lots of programs, and all of these things are great, but that they could not really comprehend that the majority of people growing up around me, were professional Blacks. And I always found the need to sort of educate everyone about the fact that
D2.
Right. That there are people of color, from all walks of life, and kind of defy the stereotypes. And also help them to understand why everyone is not where I am, or wasn't where my family was, and what historical issues contributed to that.
Correct. It's not their fault in most cases. It's not their fault.
Exactly. So yeah, I've always been that one Black friend. And so
I think, listen, many of us can identify, but again, we're laughing, and that's not something that we should laugh at, because that's also a definition of a racist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
I was definitely the one Black friend, and even growing up as a young person in my teens, and when I think about it now, maybe I was doing it consciously, but I would out the gate say what my mother did, my father did, my uncle's a doctor, because off the bat I wanted people to realize
accept you and embrace you and
realize
you were different.
And that there are Black people that are well educated and live around the world. And I would always lead with that. For even, I would say at work, very quickly on, I'm just kind of like, just so you know, we do things, okay? So yeah, I mean, it's ingrained in me to do that, just because I know that there's so many stereotypes out there, especially in corporate America.
But there's stereotypes, even as, not to cut you, Alana, but there's stereotypes even as a mother of a Black teenage boy in this country. I have experienced some subtle profiling as well. And you know your girl, when I pull up correct. Like I
Right.
mean, like, what are you saying? Like, so for me, because I've been wearing blinkers, I've had several teachers sort of pigeonhole me as the single mom and constantly coming to me and can I just pull up a minute? Nothing is wrong with the single mom. You hear me?
No, yeah.
Yeah, you have single mothers giving their kids the best life out there, working hard to make sure their babies go to school, get the best, live in the best communities. So, I tip my hats off to them. But let me tell you that that's who I am. You don't tell me that's who I am. That's my point. And I've had to, generally, when this happens, my husband shows up with me, and so clearly it validates me as somebody who's worthy, because my husband has to show up with me to show that my son has a father in his life. It's crazy. It's so crazy.
Right.
And particularly for me, who grew up in the Caribbean, I've had to understand things that I never had to comprehend as a young woman working professionally and living a fabulous life in the Caribbean. It's just very different. But I'm not putting up with it. You didn't make me so you wouldn't break me. That's who I am. I'm not putting up with it. I ain't got time for that. And I am going to be walking out of functions where I'm the one Black friend.
Hey, I like it.
Because that's protest. They said they want us to protest peacefully. Right?
It. Yeah.
So what do you say to those friends who say that they don't see color?
Oh, please.
I mean, it's not even, is it a discussion? I mean, it's nonsense.
Seeing color is a good thing. It's a good thing. I think that's what people fail to recognize, right? It's a good thing because what brings a well-rounded person and what makes you a well-rounded person is a diversity of experience. And having friends and people around you who bring a diversity of experience is a good thing. I don't want my child to just have all Black friends, right? I feel
precisely.
You all need diversity of experience. And for me, I love to travel, and just having that worldview of different cultures is incredible. So I think that's a bad thing, too.
But I really just want my child to have his eyes open, though. I'm just keeping it real, because these streets ain't easy. Pursue diversity, but don't hang with nobody who wouldn't take a knee for you. Don't be like your mama.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Absolutely.
I said to my son, marry who you want, because that constitutes a non-racist. If I'm going to be telling my son, oh, don't marry this person, then I'm a racist.
As long as they'll take a knee for you.
But as long as they'll take a knee for you. You hear me?
And how do you feel about their family taking a knee?
That's what I was going to say. I don't have children. Mm-hmm. I don't have children, so I'm not saying what you said is bad. I think it's accurate and it's perfect. But you also, the extended family. I don't
care about that.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to identify anybody, but I've seen situations where that person did not come from a family that has crossed the border. And that person, you're not responsible for the family you're born into. You're not. Okay. And racists are groomed. And if a person is elevated enough and emotionally intelligent enough to know that, hey, this is wrong, I want no part of this, and they're willing to take a knee for my son and leave that mess behind, listen, they ain't losing out.
Okay. Leave their mess.
They're marrying into a good family. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Right.
You feel me?
Yeah,
I do.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to blame a child for an adult child of parents who are ignorant. My child will not be victimized when it comes to finding whoever he loves. My child will not, because I'm not going to be like you. Like, I'm not going to be you because what are you doing with your children? No, my son is allowed to love who he loves, but she got to take a knee.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk briefly before we wrap up about the defense, the angle of the defense. I mean, you can't expect the defense not to come with an angle because that's what they paid for. But these people trying to look like George Floyd would not have been alive today because he has heart problems and he has a drug addiction. Doctor.
The medical examiner said that those things, if even a factor, were a very minimal factor. And the fact that he died basically of low oxygenation, which is from the knee on his neck. And they also had brought an officer who had detained him a year before, and who testified on the stand, just basically talking about his health and the fact that, yes, he had admitted to using some drugs, but was completely coherent and normal, and, was able to pass his medical testing at that time. And that was recorded in the system. So, we don't anticipate there being any change. I go with what the medical examiner says, who actually did the autopsy on the body, that the cause of death was homicide.
But you see, when you're accustomed having a knee on our people's neck for a very long time, you really, I can understand why they think that wouldn't kill him, because the knee has always been on our necks. Alana, what you have to say to this?
No, I watched the trial during the day, on all of the witnesses, and it's just like it's very factual. 1 + 1 is equal to 2. You know what I'm saying?
Statistics numbers don't lie.
So the whole, and that's what makes me nervous, because with law, and you go around the circle and you dissect this and you piecemeal it, you just really, sometimes they overlook the fact that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Like what you said, the coroner, the autopsy, it's just, I don't know why
I hear you. I hear you with that. But here's what's different about this. And just like the doc said, what I'm hopeful for, I would say, when it comes to the law, defense lawyers are very good at, in the case of the great Johnny Cochran, the glove couldn't fit.
I know.
In this case, the glove fit.
The glove fits.
It fits. So they got to acquit. The glove fits.
The police chief basically testifying against an officer.
And the medical examiner says knee equal
homicide. Low oxygen equals
low oxygen.
Yes.
Right.
So you can't piece no evidence around that.
No. And police protocols, if you see a victim struggling, then you don't need to use that force. Struggling in the sense not against you, but
it don't get no clearer than that. So you can piece other things. You can say the night before he did he was breathing, he was talking, he was walking to his car before you put the knee on the neck. Full stop.
I totally agree with you. I think yesterday the witnesses were very good for the defense. I think his name was Seth Stoughton or something like that, I believe his name is. He was very good.
What did he say?
He broke it down, basically saying that there was no reason for him, fine knee on the neck at the beginning to restrain, but for 9 minutes and 23 seconds, it was unnecessary. And he broke it down frame by frame. And then you also hear the other officers saying he can't breathe, call the paramedics now. He's like, no, not yet. Chauvin is like, no, not yet. Right.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure he was dead.
Right. So, but then there was an officer that came on today basically saying that, again, Chauvin used all the right techniques, and George Floyd looked like he could probably get up again and resist. He looks like he was resisting while he was lying on the floor. The man says he looks like he was still resisting because his hands were neatly behind the back in the crevice. Neatly behind his back.
Listen, we all saw that video. So that is the best.
I know.
The best part of this is that we did not see OJ's crime, but we saw that video.
Right.
It was crazy.
That is like a man saying to his wife who caught him in bed with a woman, no, it's not a woman, it's your imagination.
I turned off the TV at that point because I was just like this. I can't.
Yeah, because that man is a cheater.
Yeah. So. But I do agree. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
Dr. Steph, what would be your reaction if justice is not served? Because we asked this last week at the end of what would be your reaction?
Extreme disappointment and continued anxiety for this country. You heard how I felt before. I would feel even more unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No consequence can happen.
So that would be your only reaction, because I said last week, and I'll say it again: to the streets I shall return.
Oh, that's a given. That's a whole nother thing. But
we have nothing to lose because we lose it all.
I think the streets will be on.
Yeah, to the streets I shall return. Mm-hmm. All bets are off.
It is.
But I agree. Like I will have extreme anxiety as well.
Extreme.
Like, and socially, just because of the pandemic, I've been very low key and everything that's going on. And I think that might make me even more not interested in socializing that much. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but I felt very like I'm good in my house.
Yeah.
I think we've all felt that, but that is not even safe for our children. And look at these adult teenagers, and they're cooped up in a house. When we were that age, we had the time of our lives, and it's just not fair. As a mother, it breaks my heart.
Right.
It breaks my husband's heart to see our son not being able to truly enjoy the best years of his life. You know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for a lot of parents. Ladies, thank you for joining me. This is the reason we created this podcast. You know, as women, we have an obligation to support, uplift each other. Instead, we're being taught to dislike each other based on race, color, class, whatever. You know, if these gruesome killings of any member of the human race have no impact on your mental health and social conscience, you should stop praying and going to church. To all the open or closet racists, I pity you. It must be hard. It must be very hard to walk around with so much pain. Why is it so difficult for you to believe in equality? Why? I laugh when I see organizations who are inherently racist scrambling to appoint heads of diversity and to employ Black and brown people. We accept your apology. We are very clear that slavery ended over 100 years ago. Quite frankly, that has nothing to do with me. I have never known anybody in my family who's a slave. And the fact that it still exists in your mind and you still require a hierarchy to feel important is very troubling to me. Be careful what you say about another human being, because it takes one to know one. When you begin to show empathy and concern for the murder of unarmed Black men and women of color, be it Blacks, Asians, Latinos, then all lives will matter. It's your girl, Basia. We're out. Thank you for watching, and most of all, thank you for listening. Cheers.